So operations day to day, the course, we are going to try to minimize contact as much as possible. Majority of elementary instruction will take place in home classroom, and secondary instruction is to be determined. As Kristen was discussing, we're continuing to evaluate those models. Currently in place, we have no visitors or volunteers. Parents will be by appointment. We currently in our buildings now have no visitors or volunteers, with the exception of obviously those that need to visit the Fisher building. And all of these day-to-day operations are, speaking of, and I want to make that very clear, as of today. Today, if you were to come to the district, in terms of face coverings, currently all buildings entrance must wear a mask. That does include the students that are attending our athletic programming right now. So when low physical activity is occurring, or whenever possible, they are wearing masks. So for example, if they come to the building, they enter in a mask, they check in. When they go to a high physical level, they are allowed to remove that mask, but we are working in smaller groups to alleviate the possibility and the possibility of spreading the potential risk of COVID-19. At this point, temperature checks will not be conducted unless student shows other signs of illness. And this is very common with how we would run operations on a day-to-day level pre-COVID-19 as well.
Melissa, can I just add a couple of things? I think those last two areas, the face coverings and masks and temperature checks, are two things that have kind of moved a little bit over time. Temperature checks were the thing to do. They were saying that's the way you can screen. And now the common belief is it's not a good use of time or expenditures and it's not that effective as a screener for COVID. And I know Dr. Richer is here and he could touch on that as well at some point when he talks a little bit. And also with face coverings, I would say at this point, if we started school today, it'd be required for all students and staff. As we continue to work toward that, I think face coverings is something that anybody you talk to in the medical field are saying that it's very important, and it's the way we stop this virus and the way we protect ourselves and others as well. And as much as everything has become political in this area, I'm just really not going to listen to any of that. We're going to do what our medical experts tell us is the right thing to do for our staff and for our students. So I know there's people that refuse to believe they should be wearing a mask, and that's fine. We'll have to address that. But if we were starting school today, it would be required for everybody. All right, next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so as we have now, we have entrance and exit protocols, visitor management protocols. Those are being updated to add COVID-19 questions. So ultimately, we are asking anybody who enters the building to currently check in with a check-in form. So it's a quick scan of a QR code, or you type in the address and you are allowed to just put your name in. And this is really truly so that we can track people who are entering and exiting the building and ultimately get in contact with those individuals should we have a COVID-19 positive case. High-risk staff and students, we currently, we work with staff and students based on doctor recommendations. That has always been the case, and that will continue to be the case. So if students or staff need special circumstances in their classroom, for example, if a room needs air conditioning and we don't have that available building-wide, if that is part of the recommendation for that student or staff based on their doctor, then we would go ahead and put that in. Same thing with COVID-19. Anything that comes forward that is reasonably that we are able to accommodate, we would do everything in our power to make that happen. Field trips and gatherings, we are only walking field trips at this time in small groups. So travel and international planning strongly discouraged. I know, for example, the band, they're currently looking at their practices for travel this fall even, and they're going to be making a decision shortly on that. So ultimately, it's only walking field trips in small groups. Any contact information related to the COVID-19 and point of contact for COVID-19 would be our district nurse, Caitlin Lassie. Go to the next slide, Mr. Price. Thank you. So some of the things that we're currently working on in our department are installing physical barriers, and these physical barriers are really what everybody's kind of seen at when you go to grocery stores. Physical barriers, plexiglass barriers in public spaces and areas that are open to the public frequently. So, for example, front office administrative assistant, if they didn't have plexiglass there currently, we are installing that now. Also, anywhere that would require a group of individuals to come together in one room, maybe it is a parent comes in, wants to talk to a principal, we are allowing mobile plexiglass that can sit on the table and or a desk. So you have that option to be able to put that up if needed, if there is a larger group that needs to meet in one room. Floor adhesives, I think many of us have seen these. They are something that we are actively pursuing and putting in. Separation stickers, and it really is for those high traffic areas. So trying to help with the hallway traffic, corridor traffic, as kids need to use bathrooms, we know that's going to happen. The signage will be there to be able to direct them and where to stand and how to properly, safely get from spot to spot. And that goes along with safety signage. This does include hand hygiene. So you're going to see quite extensive amount of hand hygiene, social distancing. What are the symptoms? Are you feeling them? And this will go all the way from elementary level up to high school. And then drinking water, bottle filling only. So we will have the, what I would say the bottom portion of the drinking fountains, we will have those unavailable, but the bottle fillers we will. For those buildings that do not have bottle fillers, we are currently installing them so they have access to those. Next slide, please. Okay. The other couple of items we're currently working on, sanitation stations, so hand washing stations. We are increasing the amount of hand washing stations. We are fortunate enough in our district to have many buildings that have sinks in their classrooms, so that helps with the hand washing. However, there are some buildings that do not have that. And there are some buildings that their only real option to hand wash was in the restroom. So we have actually, we are currently installing additional hand washing stations throughout all the buildings so that students will have more access and teachers and staff will have additional access to those hand washing stations. Locker usage, we are currently looking into the rotating or use of backpacks. So that they, again, limit the use of lockers and creating space, removing the furniture, reconfiguring. Currently, we are removing anything non-essential in the classroom. So this really is trying to, what I would term, declutter the classrooms so that we can spread out more, have more room if we needed, and then have more available for the teaching spaces. Health room, we are identifying space in all of our buildings for a health room, and that's for additional PPE needs or identification of space for those that do come down with symptoms or a high fever, and we have the availability to keep them separate from other individuals until we know information or a guardian can come pick them up. Wanted to touch base a little bit for the physical spaces for this upcoming fall on construction progress. Construction is on schedule, and we are COVID-19 has not impacted construction in the as far as schedule goes. Some of the areas that we are working through is just space. So specifically at some of the new buildings, McKinley and Wilson W. STEM, their space had decreased slightly so that we could accommodate by renovating one side or building one school, and we had to remove some of the other areas of the school. With those, we are getting creative. We are going to be adding a couple more trailers or portable school rooms, I'll call it, for office spaces, and again, those health room spaces, so that we don't have a mix of office and health room spaces within a classroom, or per se, somebody has to walk through those spaces to get to another space. We are going to create those spaces outside that building, so those are coming and available specifically to Wilson W. STEM and McKinley. Okay, next slide. So healthy environments, what does this mean? Really want to touch base on the ventilation, and actually this is something that came up in our operations logistics team that I wanted to be able to provide some insight on. We are currently installing new filters for increased circulation of outside air into buildings. Now, every year we have preventative maintenance and we change the filters. However, right now we are installing a better filter, one that works well with the COVID-19 virus. We also are, with the new ventilation systems that are going in many of our buildings, we have that opportunity in our existing buildings and our new buildings, even more with technology, to allow outside air into the classrooms and common spaces. One of the questions that does get brought to my attention quite frequently is, should we just keep our doors and our windows open all the time? And although that's great in theory, really, actually the best option we could do is close those windows and not allow the air to come in through the windows, because right now our buildings are balanced in a matter that air can get in the way it needs to and exhaust can get out the way it needs to, because it's a balanced system. If we start opening up the windows, it actually creates a little bit of unbalance or imbalance to that system, which doesn't allow it to work at its full capacity. So our best option is to purchase the better filters and increase outside air into the spaces, which we will be doing, and allowing 100% outside air when occupied by students and staff. Shared objects, we are going from individual supply, or we're going to individual supplies from what we would typically call group supplies. So if crayons were put in the middle of the table, they now are going to be assigned to students. Communal spaces, so again, just focusing on limiting the student movement. Elementary schools, we are evaluating and we are eating lunch in classrooms, so that's the model we're looking at. And secondary students, we are also going to evaluate classrooms and hallway spaces, or at least trying to get students to spread out in the classroom, in the corridor or the classroom. Cleaning and disinfecting, we are increasing our cleaning and disinfecting efforts on a daily basis. We will not be able to go between every class period. However, the restrooms and the common spaces are going to be cleaned more frequently throughout the day. So before, they might have only been cleaned once during the day. Now we're going to up that to potentially even 3 times. We're still evaluating what that routine looks like. Hand hygiene, I think we covered that, but we're going to continue to teach and reinforce proper hand hygiene, the 20 seconds, and place signage where needed. But more than just putting a sign up and hoping people follow it, it's really trying to educate our students and using teachers to help us with that education, and then just constant reminders throughout the day to hand wash. And then modifying building layouts, we are currently looking at changing some classrooms with other classrooms depending on class load. So we're currently in our operations logistics team, even up till today, looking at ways that we can redistribute some of the classroom spaces so that we can, if a class is in a smaller room than a larger room, but they have more occupants, we may actually end up changing that so that they flip-flop rooms. Very common with the theater, choir, and band.